12 o'clock and we have lots of attendees on the call. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Today, we are having a totally different kind of webinar than what we've had in the past. We've been joined by a panel of experts that represent a number of different expertise, but specifically providing benefit to those flippers out there, people who are investing in real estate and flipping homes to try to turn it over for a profit. And we have people with a lot of expertise here. So I just want to take a moment to introduce everybody or give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves. And maybe we'll start left to right on our screen here. Alan, why don't you kick it off by introducing yourself from Bōde?
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So my name is Alan Kelly. I'm founder and chief revenue officer at Bōde. So Bōde, for those who don't know, it's a licensed real estate brokerage. We're licensed in all 10 boards in Alberta, so we can help people buy and sell homes anywhere in Alberta. We're a relatively new company. We're about 1 year old, but we've grown very quickly, having done a lot of transactions in the past 1 year, and particularly in the last months since COVID began. And we are now in the top 10% of brokerages in all of Alberta. So what we do that's very helpful for flippers is we give people market data so they can look up the sold price of any home in Alberta that's sold in the last 10 years. We also help people buy on market. So if you're looking to buy any MLS listing, we can help you buy that at no cost. So you pay no buy-side commission when you buy through Bōde. And the final thing we can help with is helping you sell properties you've flipped, help you sell them for the best price. We've got lots of tools and analytics that help you do that.
Excellent. And thanks so much for joining us, Alan. It'll be great to have your vantage point for this conversation. And Garrett, why don't you introduce yourself from Calvert?
For sure. Thanks, Lindsay. So my name is Garrett LaBarre. I've been with Calvert for 2.5 years now, but been in the private lending industry for over 5 years. Calvert has been in business since 1970, and we've dealt with flippers for over 40 years. So we have a lot of experience with flip mortgages, and we assist clients with specific financing for flips. With minimal money down. We provide financing so that people can purchase properties in Alberta with just 10 grand down. So we have a very interesting product, and look forward to speaking more about flips today and how you can make a profit.
Excellent. And order in the page that I see, but in order of slide, Nolan, would you like to introduce yourself from Mortgage 360?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Nolan Matthias. I am the co-founder of Mortgage 360. We are the first B Corp certified mortgage company in North America. For those of you who don't know what B Corp is, go and look it up. But basically, it is a standard around transparency, accountability, and social and environmental impact. And we are, unlike Garrett, who is a private lender, we are a mortgage broker. We basically broker deals, find lenders like Garrett's company, and also do a lot of prime mortgages with big banks and financial institutions. And we basically help first-time homebuyers, flippers, people who have investment portfolios find the right mortgage that fits their needs.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, we have Jason from Bow River Properties.
Yeah, thanks also for having me on today. I am the sales director for Bow River Properties and the parent company DCI Properties. We operate out of southwestern Ontario and the Calgary market. And we pride ourselves on being the source of the deal for flippers as well as investors, looking for off-market properties, whether it be multifamily or single-family properties. We are very new to the Calgary market. It was our goal to get there in 2020 as our parent office is in London, Ontario. And in the last 18 months, I think we're now north of purchasing about 120 plus homes. And with that, we try to assign the majority of our deals to investors who, of course, take it the final steps on whether it be a flip or hold it as an investment long term.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us, and it is great to have such a diverse group that provides so many benefits to flippers and real estate investors across the board here. So each of those questions are going to come from are going to be able to be answered by a number of different people that have a number of different benefits from their business. So that is fantastic. The format that we are going to be kicking off today is mainly you guys are all in the hot seat. And all the real hard questions are going to come from our attendees here, and we have a number of them. So anyone who is interested in asking each individual or a general question of our panelists, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A button on the left-hand side of your screen. If you could also identify if the question is specifically for an individual. I've noticed the number of questions that have come in that could be answered by everyone, and if that's the intent, we will definitely do that. But if there is a question specifically on individuals, let us know about that. I did want to kick it off with one lob for everyone. Is now a good time to enter the flip market? And I think this is something that everyone has an excellent perspective on. So why don't we go ahead with Nolan first? Answering, is now a good time to start a flip?
Well, I mean, for us, the answer, I hope, is clearly yes, because we're actually in the process of doing our very first flip. We've obviously worked with a lot of clients in the past, helping them get mortgages to do the exact thing that we're doing now. But we recently bought a property at about $132,000 in Calgary here. It was a judicial sale. We went, found a great contractor, have him doing about $35,000 worth of work. So when all said and done, we're going to be into it for about $167,000, and it will easily appraise for at least $200,000, probably closer to $215,000. And with all those numbers and the way that they're working, it's very much an indication that it's a good market for that. And the one thing I do have to say, and I'm going to pump Garrett's tires and Calvert's tires here a little bit right out of the gate, is the reason why we're so certain on the numbers and that it is a good time for us to do that flip is because they helped us go through and run the numbers with their in-house appraisal and in-house appraiser, and basically make sure that we were buying a property that was definitely with certainty going to be a good property to flip. They also saved our butts on a previous one that I looked at that wasn't necessarily going to be such a good property that I was gung-ho to do and ultimately didn't do because Garrett and his team were able to say, hey, hold on, pump the brakes. This one doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. So yes, with the right property, I think it is a good time for people to be doing flips in Calgary.
And Jason, maybe you can help us understand what makes it a good property for a flip, and what the opportunities are now for given the market dynamics and what's happening out there. What from your perspective makes it a good time to flip?
Yeah, I mean, on Nolan's point, I think it ultimately comes back to the buy and making sure that the numbers work at the price you're buying it at. Obviously, you're going to have to define your criteria and price point that you want to purchase in. But if you are buying a property that's well below market value and has room, regardless of a market shift during the time that you do hold it. And I mean, we're playing with some other factors here now with COVID, of course, which has been ongoing, but has really started to come back into all of our lives. But with the right price point that you do purchase the property at, there is room for stuff out of your control.
And over to you, Garrett. Thoughts on flipping projects right now?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really dependent on that price point. We've seen that the market's actually stayed pretty steady for the properties that are $500,000 and less. Anything above that is taking a lot longer to sell. And as we know in flipping houses, the most important thing is speed. So turning over your properties, making sure you're looking in good neighborhoods with good inventory, good turnover, that sort of stuff. But I do believe there's still opportunity out there. We've still seen a lot of our flip clients do really well. And as Nolan mentioned, he's working on one right now, and we're hoping that one goes well too. He shouldn't be complimenting me on the appraisal side, because I don't know much about that, but we do have our internal appraisers that help us out with that sort of thing and can help out real estate investors like Nolan. So yeah, I think there's opportunity for sure.
Excellent. And over to Alan, how do we determine whether or not it's a good market to flip in?
Yeah, well, fully agree with the other three. Maybe to take a slightly different lens on it, I suppose. And if you look at from the market, particularly MLS, and look at just the amount of activity on there, a lot of people might assume that because of COVID, there's been far fewer transactions. And that was certainly true back in March, April, and May. But since then, since June, there's been a lot of activity, and there's been higher activity June, July, August, September, November. It's been much higher in these months than in the previous years. So I think now is actually, there's still a lot of activity happening out there. And so if whether you're looking to buy or whether you're looking to sell, as long as that stays the same for the next few months, then I think it's certainly a good time for either. Maybe on the one other comment, I suppose, on the data is looking at the amount of inventory for sale on market right now. So on MLS, there's less inventory available to be purchased right now. So you might have slightly less selection, and particularly that makes it more interesting to look at off-market opportunities that Jason and Bow River are able to help with.
Excellent. All right, I'm getting flooded with questions. So a couple of these are for everyone to answer. Can everyone let us know what where your website's found? And I think specifically for Bōde and for Bow River, where does your inventory come from on your website? So maybe you can answer those questions specifically. Over to you, Nolan.
Yeah, our website's pretty simple. It's mortgage360.ca.
Beauty. Jason, how about you? What's your website, and where does your inventory come from on your website?
Yep. We have bowriverproperties.ca and dciproperties.ca. For inventory, people can reach out to me directly, but we do have an investor list that we can provide a link for as well to get on our list for available properties that we do send out. We don't have an actual website for them, but we do send them out to our investor list via email.
Awesome. And Jason, just while I've got you, is there commercial properties available with Bow River as well, or are they simply residential?
We do focus mostly on residential, but if a deal makes sense commercial-wise, we will look at it. There's obviously a lot more due diligence that can sometimes go into commercial properties, and that's why residential has just been so popular for us, especially on the single-family side and flips. It's pretty straightforward that way and just a lot less time-consuming. But we do look at commercial if it is presented to us.
Excellent. Garrett, what's your website address?
I can send it in the notes, but you can just look up Calvert Home Mortgage. It should be the first one on there. And yeah, a lot of good information.
And just so we're clear, at the end, we will be sending contact details for every one of our panelists to anyone who's attending, to make sure that you have access to these individuals for any subsequent conversations that you may have. Alan, care to share our domain as well as where we get our properties from? Yeah, so we're bodecanada.com. And you can, what we have on our website in terms of inventory is we have all of the MLS listings. So anything that's listed on realtor.ca is on our website as well. And as I mentioned at the start, you can book a showing or purchase any of those properties directly through our website, and you get supported with all of the contracts and negotiation tools that you'll need all online. We also have our own listings, so that's homes listed with Bōde. Most of those are on realtor.ca as well, but we do have some that are listed with us that are not on MLS. So we do have some off-market properties as well. So you will find some of those. You just have to go to our buy search page, and you can check a little box that says Bōde properties only, and you'll see exactly what's listed with us. Awesome. I do have, I'm going to work my way down this very long list. Would you guys like to go into the Calgary condo market and how sluggish it is? Obviously, you can't change the location of a condo that you've already purchased. So other than price, what are the kind of things that can help improve your selling situation from a condo point of view? Alan, maybe you're up first on this one.
Yeah, sure. So whoever's asking the question is absolutely right. The condo market is sluggish. If you look at months of inventory, there's a lot of inventory on the market, and it's not selling particularly quickly. So that's, of all property types, that's the slowest selling at the moment. There's 7.5 or 8 months of inventory, which means that there's a lot of supply and not as much demand. In terms of what you can do to try and get those sold, I think it's really important to just take a look at the market data in your area. So understanding what's happening with prices, looking at similar condos that have sold in your building and others nearby, what they sold for. So it's really all about getting your pricing right. And if you're listed at an attractive price, you will attract interested buyers.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Alan. Condo market is more difficult right now. There's a lot of inventory, and I believe there's just that mental block right now of having COVID around and being near other people. So they're just not as marketable. But if you're looking at comps selling in the same building or near yours, same square footage, that have sold recently during COVID, then if you're listing appropriately, you should still be able to attract some interested buyers. And I know Nolan's got one that we just looked at recently, and we pulled comps that were in the same building or right around it, and things are still selling at the price point he has his flip at.
Yeah,
And
if I can
Garrett,
add to
maybe.
that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, if I can add to that, I think when you're thinking about a flip, just like anything else in the business world, if you can look to who your market is and then aim for that market, that makes things a lot easier when it comes to a sluggish market. So for example, the flip that we're doing, we're clearly looking for either renters or buyers who are young professionals, and we're targeting that specific market and working with our contractor to do things like, create focal points in that particular unit that somebody who is in that target market would want. So for example, a cutting block island in there, or a feature door on the pantry, or things that are really going to attract somebody's attention via the images. And then when they get in the unit, actually see it and go, oh my God, I love the way this looks. And I absolutely need to own this condo because it has these 3 or 4 unique things. So, really thinking about your target market can be something that makes a condo move faster in a market where they aren't necessarily moving real quick. And a butcher block countertop, it might cost you $1,500, but it might get you a property sold 3 months faster and for $3,000 or $4,000 more than what your actual cost to put it in is.
Excellent. I have a question here around, are there specific mortgage products designed specifically for flipping? And if so, how do they differ from a standard mortgage?
I assume that one's for me. Is that a fair assumption?
I think I don't want it.
Yeah, either way, but I can explain our flip financing product quickly. We do offer specific financing for flips. We allow real estate investors to purchase properties with just 10 grand down. And you need to cover the 10 grand down plus the renovation costs and the carrying costs, and you can get into a flip with that much money. So it's a pretty low cost way of getting into flipping. And we're also a team of experts that are going to help you on the way. We have an internal appraiser who does valuations in-house at no cost within 24 hours. And we're going to make sure that you're profitable, or we think you're going to be profitable on each and every flip. And I'm sure Nolan can speak to that even more so, and we can send out more information on our flip financing.
Yeah, and I mean the only other thing I would add to that is, there's certain things that you can do in conjunction with a product like what Calvert has in order to get a down payment. So things like adding a line of credit to your existing property. We like the Scotia Step Mortgage, which is a product where as you pay down your mortgage, the line of credit becomes available, and then you can use that for your $10,000 down payment and for the renovation costs. So there's different things we can do with existing properties that you own or that you live in order to assist with getting set up for the Calvert product as well.
Yeah, for sure. There's you can finance a flip in many different ways, and getting the down payment and renovation costs can come from different sources and can be cheaper than other financing like credit cards and stuff. So getting a line of credit set up on another property that Nolan can do for you with his team and stuff like that is really important to have. So building a team of experts to assist you in your flip goals, I think is awesome.
Excellent. I'm not entirely sure who this question is for, but are there tax ramifications that are specific to flips? What is it that people have to contemplate as it relates to taxes when buying and selling a home for flipping purposes?
Garrett, Garrett, I reckon that's one for you.
Garrett again.
Yeah, I'm not an accountant. And what we typically tell our flippers is to seek an accountant's advice as to whether or not you should be putting them in a corporation, just a hold co or your personal name. It can vary depending on the amount of flips that you're doing, whether or not you're flipping them to rent out afterwards, whether you're flipping them to sell. There's lots of different variations, and we highly suggest seeking out the advice of a tax accountant. But maybe Jason and Nolan have other suggestions as well.
I mean, I think you're bang on with looking at your person, whether putting in your personal name or a hold co, and then looking at the capital gains ramifications, which your accountant should be able to tell you based on your income what is the better option for you.
Excellent. I think this is a question probably both for Jason and for Alan, but does anyone know the best communities in Calgary for flipping homes? And in terms of profitability and easiness of finding a potential house and potentially the saleability of said house afterwards?
Alan, you want to go first?
Fire away, Jason. I'll go second.
We've been focusing a lot, just based on what we've been speaking with on investors that have reached out to us. The Bonavista Vista area, Northeast Calgary, because of the purchase price, and then kind of just in the areas outside of downtown that obviously aren't the rich areas. Price points for single family houses below 300,000 to start the flip, and then end in that 400 to 450 kind of ARV has been what a lot of people have been communicating with us that they would like to see, or townhouses, semi-detached houses below 200,000 to start. So that's where we're starting. We do focus on certain neighborhoods, but we also are spanning across Calgary to find these deals. And at the end of the day, if the numbers make sense based on comparables and the data that we have available to us, I don't think anybody should be necessarily restricting themselves to one specific neighborhood.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, some of the communities Jason mentioned, definitely you see a lot of activity there, like Bonavista or the Northeast or the inner Southwest. Particularly, we see a lot of people looking to flip detached bungalows, 1950s bungalows, to update them and then flip them. But I would agree that you can look at any area for potential flips, and some of the tools we have at Bōde on our website can be very helpful for that. So if you go on our website, we've got an area called My Abode, where you can look up market and sold data. So you can look at any community and see what's happening in terms of the sales volumes, see what's happening in terms of the amount of supply, so how many active listings there are. You can filter by year built, you can filter by property type. So if you just want to look at detached bungalows, for example, you can do that. And you can see all the trends for yourself. So I'd definitely encourage people to go take a look at that anytime they're looking at a particular area.
Yeah, it's definitely good information for both on the buy side and on the sell side, what it's possible to sell for in that home and comparable homes and what they've sold for, to Nolan's previous point as well, making sure that you've got your target market and that it's actually selling for that in that target market already in that community.
Mhm.
I have a question for Jason. Would location be better to flip with less margin or better margin in a less demand area? What's more important, the margin or the location from your perspective?
I'm a big margin guy, but you also, if you're looking at, I mean, I know the question is direct at flips, but if you are looking at like a hold, I'm more of a location guy. But for me, if there's a better spread there, at some point, if you do a good job on the renovation, I do believe it will sell, and I would prefer a larger margin just because there's a safety net there than a smaller margin on a better location. Now, do I think you should go and flip in a D- area? That's not necessarily what I'm about either. But if you can find, a good margin in a B- area, compared to say a small margin in an A area, because what comes with a better location is also a higher price point, right? And so now you've kind of worked yourself into a smaller margin on a higher price point, which if you're holding that property longer, that small margin can disappear pretty quickly.
Excellent. An interesting question for this group is there someone on the panel who can make referrals to reputable contractors?
That's a good question and not an easy one to answer, because there are good contractors out there, but finding them is difficult. And when flippers that we know of find a good contractor, they don't want to share them. So we're not out there finding those contractors for you. It is difficult. And I maybe am not the best person to answer that, but I'll say that flippers do not want to share their contractors, and they don't want to share the names of who they have.
Hey, Nolan, who are all your best contractors?
I figured that was coming. I don't think I can answer the question from the perspective of here's some great contractors to go to, because like Garrett said, they're hard to find. My guys booked out 6 months doing both this type of transaction and also doing purchase plus improvements, which is when somebody wants to purchase a property to live in it and make a renovation. That being said, I can tell you the one thing that kept us out of the split market for probably 8 to 10 months in 2020 was finding a really good contractor. We just didn't have a contact yet that we felt comfortable with. We knew lots of them, but we didn't have the one that gave us that warm and fuzzy feeling. And how we ended up finding that eventually was just by continuing to ask around. Realtors often have contacts in that sort of market as well. And just continuing to ask around until we found the guy that was the right fit for us. And I think just like finding the property, finding the contractor is half the battle. And you got to go. Sometimes you need a bottle, but it's half the battle. And you got to approach that in the exact same way that you would finding an actual property.
Awesome.
Maybe to add a slightly different perspective there. So we at Bōde have a part of our website called the Pro Marketplace. You can find it at the top of our web page. And there we curate a list of service providers all related to your home move. So it's just in beta at the moment. So we're just testing some early functionality there. But in the coming months, we will have a list of general contractors that will be shortlisted by area that they serve. So we will have some recommendations there for people in the future. So I encourage people to take a look at that.
Better have a big list because they'll
Yeah.
be in hot demand.
Yeah, right. They might have to
think-
pull out of the list when they're too busy.
Yeah. And another option for you is when you do meet these contractors, obviously make sure it's a good fit with the relationship side, but go and see some of their work. Go and see what projects they're working on right now. If they're not working on projects, there's probably a reason for that. I mean, Nolan, you mentioned that your one guy is 6 months out. That's probably a good contractor, right? But if you can, it's obviously a little bit of an art form, but if you can time the closing of a property within reason of when a contractor is becoming available, and obviously bring that contractor through when you're walking the property, and then set up those timelines, right? But it definitely is one of the most challenging parts of flipping is finding that contractor.
So I have a question on market dynamics here. Should flippers sit on the sidelines for a few months, given that there's a concern in the Calgary metro prices may decline for about 10% in 2021, and then is less inventory, with less inventory, will the prices stay stable during the next few months? As inventory increases, do you see the drop in the prices? And so that's probably both for Jason and for Alan.
I can take a first crack at that. I think so. Certainly for the last few months, you've just been watching inventory go down and down relative to where it normally is for that time of year. So even in the month where it has gone up slightly, it's still down year over year. So I would say in 2021, nobody has a crystal ball about what's going to happen. But my best guess would be early in 2021, inventory will still be low. And really, it depends on the product type. So whether it's detached or attached or a condo or apartment, and the community, because the dynamics are so different depending on each of those things. So definitely worth taking a look at the data for yourself and figuring out what you think is happening in the particular community and the particular property type that you're interested in.
Yeah, and I also think it also comes back to the very first question on the numbers and buying right. But also, be careful on the scope of your reno. Don't make it this massive gut of a 3-story house that's going to take 9 months to complete. Something that, Garrett, you mentioned speed of the renovation. Get in and out of there in 2 to 3 months, and at least find a buyer for that. Whether the property closes in a 5-month period, as long as you have a firm offer in that 2 to 3 month period, or even 4 months, the market shouldn't shift drastically again. And if you purchase right, you're going to be protecting yourself as well.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, and it is all about speed with flipping, because the market is less likely to change if you're flipping within 3 months. So if you're doing them fast, the market's not going to change as much. And then if you are concerned, just make sure you have more of a margin, profit margin on those projects. So we at Calvert can help you do that, as well as Nolan. Being able to look at the flips and make sure you go through all the numbers and making sure that it's likely to be profitable and has a good margin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to add to that as well. I'm an economist by training and education. And one thing I can tell you about investing is if you're trying to time the market, that's where you start to get yourself in trouble. So waiting because you think, values are going to go down 10%. Well, they might go down 10%. They might go the opposite direction. So what you need to really think about when you're flipping is, if values go down 10%, do I have enough margin in this property to still be okay? Because what could happen is the opposite. I go back to 2005, where I owned a condo down in the Wedgwood in New Discovery, and I sold it for $250,000 in October, because all the economists were predicting that the market was going to get worse. June of 2006, the identical condo 3 doors down sold for $400,000. So I left $150,000 on the table, because I thought that the market was going to go down, not up. Trying to time it, maybe make a big mistake to the tune of a pretty big chunk of change. That could happen going into spring of 2021. You never know, right?
Absolutely. I have a couple of questions specifically for Jason here. The question is, what's the average time from purchase to possession for the homes you've done in the past?
Yeah, no, great question. Generally, we will put a property under contract. We'll have a 2-week conditional period in which we are trying to find an investor to partner with us on that project. And then from there on out, it really is on sellers' terms on when they would like to close with us. But we, on average, see about 4 to 8 weeks, I would say. So, you could probably put 6 weeks average from the time we start with them to when the investor takes over.
Awesome. And then I have a bunch of questions, and they're all kind of going in the same direction. And that question is, how do I decide how much I should be investing in a flip? Should I do lipstick on this pig? Should I I'm actually reading, although I use that comment all the time. Should I do a $20,000 to $30,000 investment? How do I decide when I look at it, any individual flip, how much actual cost investment I should put in? And this is a general question for everyone.
Yeah. Completely dependent on the neighborhood you're flipping in, and the current status of the house. You obviously, it's the one thing I would suggest not trying to get into is all the mechanical. If there's mechanical issues with the property, I wouldn't get into it. It's not worth it. You won't get your money back out of it. But your renovation should be based on what the neighborhood standard is. You don't want to go above that. You don't want to go below that. You want to stick to the neighborhood standard. So I would base your renovation on where you're buying your properties.
Anyone else want to kick at that one?
I would say if there's anything structurally wrong with the property, to also walk away. That can be a big can of worms to get into. I know that in Southwestern Ontario, we have a lot of century homes, and we see that a lot more than potentially out in Calgary. But we run into them, and they can be thousands upon thousands of dollars that the person that sold it to you is very happy they got out of there. So if you can keep it to lipstick on the pig, I definitely suggest it.
I mean, basically what you're trying to do, right, is you're trying to bridge the gap between what you're paying for it and what renovated similar properties sell for. And then you're establishing the cost to get it from what you're paying for it to the point of what the renovated properties are worth. And if there's profit margin in there, and let's say it costs, there's $100,000 difference between what you're buying and what the value will be as finished, and you can get it to there with $50,000, well, then you've got your $50,000 in profits or your margin, right? So basically all you're trying to do is an equation for the gap, and then whether or not the money left over after you do the renovations is enough to make it worth your while.
Yeah, great answers. I think nothing to add from my side on that.
Fair. You mentioned structural problems, mechanical problems. Is asbestos another reason to stay away from a flip, or is it not too much of a concern?
It can be costly. Again, it depends on what you're doing to the property, but technically, yes, like asbestos can be an issue. But that is a more difficult question to answer. Jason, do you have more on that?
I'm not a huge expert on asbestos, but sometimes it can be contractor to contractor on what they're comfortable in doing. If you got to remediate a lot of asbestos, that there's those stories of them like tenting up the house and going in with the full mask on and everything. I haven't heard of that experience. But I have also heard, if we do this safely in-house with the right masks on and whatnot, we could probably get rid of this. But also spotting asbestos can be difficult. So I know that in some demos, it just gets removed and you didn't even know that it was there. So it really depends on the scale of how much asbestos you find, because there's all different kinds out there.
Excellent. Okay. Sorry, go ahead. No.
I think that was your own echo.
I'm talking to myself again. That's typical of me. So there's a number of questions around the carrying cost. And I think maybe we've touched on this from a number of angles, but since the carrying cost is such a big factor, do you have any advice on how to ensure that carrying cost is absolutely at the minimum? And I think this is a question potentially for Garrett.
Yeah, this is why flipping is so important, or speed is so important. And it's also very important to have a team put together. We're going to work with flippers. Our main underwriting criteria is, are you going to make a profit? So we're going to make sure you're set up for success. Speed is super important. And if you're not able to sell it once you're done, the renovations, then you need someone like Nolan to help you out with refinancing the property so that you're not paying a higher interest rate. The carrying costs. You can also use different types of financing towards a flip. And as mentioned before, you can do it through lines of credit. You can do it through joint ventures, different things. So there's lots of different ways you can finance a flip.
Awesome. Well, I've got you, Garrett. Another one for you. How much is the mortgage rate with the 10K down?
Yeah, so doing the 10K down, it's at 15.5% annualized. So that's 1.29% per month. So again, this is all a speed thing. And these are structured so they're fully open mortgages. If you want to put more money down, our rate will go down gradually. We have done flip mortgages at 8.9%, but that's obviously putting quite a bit more money down. But what most flippers tell us is, and what we've seen from the industry, is that cash is king. So if you have cash in your pocket and you're able to do multiple properties at once, then you're able to make more profit from those properties than you would with just one and having lots of capital in the one project. But we really work with our flippers. We want to see them succeed, and we're going to do everything we can on the due diligence side to make that happen.
Maybe one quick comment on trying to sell quickly. So certainly that's something Bōde can support you with, and something that we do that's quite unique versus a traditional listing realtor is that once you list with us, we give you back a bunch of data about how your listing's performing that'll help you figure out how to sell it faster. So one example would be, say you've been listed with us for 2 weeks, you'll be able to see exactly how many showing requests you've had in those 2 weeks and how that benchmarks against the rest of the market. So you'll see, well, the average home that sells, how many showing requests would that have after 2 weeks? And those that sell quickly, how many would they have? And those that sell slowly, how many would those have? So you can kind of figure out where you are in that mix and then either improve your listing by improving the description or the pictures that you have, or by lowering your price by the right amount to try and sell quickly. Because as Garrett says, speed is so important. And in terms of minimizing your carrying costs, you want a partner who's going to help you on the sell side to figure out how to get your home sold as quickly as possible.
One thing I'll add on that interest rate question is that when you look at that interest rate question, most people think about interest rate and they think that's the price, that's the cost, and they analyze it based on a percentage rate that really is just kind of an indicator of what the cost is, but isn't necessarily an indicator of what the actual value is. And I can't emphasize enough that when you're dealing with Calvert on these things, you're not paying for the money. What you're paying for is the expertise that they provide. And that expertise, in my mind, if you haven't done 100 of these things, is totally invaluable. Like, they could charge me 25% and I'd pay it just for that expertise.
Don't tell them that, Nolan. your next bill just went up.
It's going to be more expensive. But you're basically paying for consultants, not necessarily the money, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's way cheaper than going to some real estate investment club and going 50-50 on a partnership with somebody who just happens to have the money, right?
I have a softball for both Jason and Alan. I believe, has anyone had any experience in selling a flipped home without a realtor? This is not a planted question at all.
Well, that's very convenient for us. So yeah, that's really what Bōde's all about, is helping people sell homes without having to pay the high realtor commissions. So when you list with Bōde, it's just a 1% fee on the sell side when the home sells, and only if it sells. So if the home never ends up selling, you don't owe us anything. And we go much further than a traditional list realtor to advertise your home. So not only do we put it on MLS or realtor.ca, we also list it on over 1,000 other listing sites, including our own. And then we run ads, paid ads on Facebook, Google, Instagram, and elsewhere for your home, so that we're targeting the people who are most likely to be interested in your specific property with online ads. So we're getting you much more exposure for that home. Ideally, you can potentially attract an unrepresented buyer, which means you don't have to pay the commission of the buy-side realtor. But it's entirely up to you what kind of buy-side commission fee you want to offer as the seller. So that's another thing that's quite unique about Bōde, is we leave it up to you to set that commission rate. So you can set what would be typical in the industry, which would be 3.5% on the first 100,000 and 1.5% on everything above that. That would be typically what a listing realtor would suggest you offer. Or you can offer anything else, any other number that you want. You can offer a lower percentage fee, you can offer a flat fee, anything you like. So we've had a lot of success with our clients in doing that. And yeah, if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out.
I'll quickly pump Alan and Bōde's tires a bit here, just because he's taken me through the whole process of listing a property and going through the purchase contract side of things on Bōde, and it is the most simplistic site I've been on to sell properties and list your homes and stuff like that. You really just need to go to the website, check it out yourself, and go through the process, because it's awesome.
Cheers, Garrett.
The next question is for if anyone has any opinions on staging the home when you go sell it. Is that an important thing to invest in, or less important?
So I can take a crack at that one. Oh no, far away, Jason.
Oh, I was just going to say, I do believe that staging a home is very valuable, especially if it's a fully renovated one. It really gives a vision of what you could do with the house, and for $1,000 to $2,000 more can really push the sale price, and your return it can be great from it. Alan, I'm not sure what you guys do, if it is an option that you include in your service or not, but some realtors may even include that service. But I'm not sure what you guys are doing, Alan. So I guess I'll leave it for you.
Yeah. So right now we are covering the cost of photos and measurements and even 3D virtual tours. But particularly for those who think it might be helpful to have their home staged for flippers, instead of a 3D tour, we can certainly look at some of the staging options instead. And some of the people listing with us have even looked at virtual staging. We work with a lot of builders, new home builders, who list homes with us, and some of them have been doing some really impressive things now with virtual staging, so that you can show, without actually having to put furniture in there, you can show what kinds of furniture you could have in there, and show even different setups for different rooms. So that's all something we can definitely help sellers with.
Excellent. Do you think it is a better time to buy and flip, or find something to build an illegal basement suite, but can rent both levels and paying for itself by holding that, versus buying and selling actually right now? I don't know who that question's for.
I'm not sure if there's a reason for the illegal component, but I am huge on secondary suite conversions. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of value there, and doing it legally as well is something that's going to definitely push your sale price if you did want to get out of that property. I know that the city of Calgary is obviously changing some things around secondary suites, and having them illegal at some point could come back to you. I have heard some things about landlords having their secondary suite that is illegal for rent, and the city's even coming in to take a look at those units and then slapping fines on them. So just be careful with the illegal part of it. But I do think that holding a house with a secondary suite to supplement the mortgage, if you want to live above, is a great option for any investor.
Yeah, we're seeing some new home builders do a little bit of this, where they're building new homes. Often they're infills, but new homes that come with a basement suite, legal basement suite, as well as a legal garden suite. And their main selling proposition then becomes, buy the home, live in it, rent out the other 2 units, and cover your mortgage completely. So I think it's something that a lot of people are looking at right now. And like Jason says, you just have to look at the numbers of that versus a traditional flip and see what you think you can do. And again, that's something that Garrett and his team can really help you evaluate different options with their suite of tools and flip analyzing spreadsheets.
And Nolan, I think there's a knock-on question there for you in that the concept of deciding to sell or hold for rent. How do you come about asking that, or having those conversations with yourself on any given project? And is renting the property for a period of time a good get out of jail free opportunity there on a flip?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch that we can unpack there, but just looking at these questions, there's one thing on here where somebody said, just if it's not zoned R2, be careful on the zoning. Just because it's zoned R2 doesn't necessarily mean that you can put an illegal basement suite in it. There's certain things that you have to do to bring them up to snuff. And I think in a recorded call, nobody's going to tell you to put a legal basement suite into a property. That would just be crazy for us to do. But making sure that if you do put a basement suite in it, that it is legal, because one, if it's not, the financing becomes very, very hard to get. And then the questions around refinancing and holding onto a property, I think it's great to have that as a backup plan, just in case the property doesn't sell. Knowing that you qualify before you go into a flip, to have that backup plan, I think is incredibly valuable, so that that you're not going to be under the gun when it comes time to try to get financing to keep it. For us, we're doing flipping, and I'm using the word flipping loosely because what we're doing is we're actually trying to build a portfolio while these condo values and values in certain areas of Calgary are low, and we're using the ability to purchase a property, do a renovation, and then refinance it out and basically get into them for zero money down, because we're adding that value in the reno. We're using that as a strategy, and we think it's a phenomenal way to build a portfolio in the market, especially in condos is where it's at the moment. That doesn't help Bōde and those guys when it comes to selling the property, but I think it's just as much a valid strategy.
Absolutely.
Is it more difficult to, when you're doing that type of refinance, to qualify? Like, are there different parameters that way, or is it like you're just qualifying for this house and you got to have the income and money available, or is it more based on the project with the refinance?
Yeah, so anytime you're doing a rental refinance, they're looking at 2 things. They're looking obviously at the property. So once you've done all the renovations, the value is the value. It's not what you purchased it for. And then the second side of it is they look at obviously the covenant, which is the individual, and the income and the ability to carry the property. But you can also use what's called a rental offset. And different lenders do this in different ways. Some are more favorable than the others, but there are lenders where you can almost basically wipe out the amount of the payment in the qualifying process, and basically make it so that you can qualify to carry more properties than just what your everyday income would qualify you for. And it's actually surprising when you start getting into owning multiple properties, how much more you qualify for when you're using a rental offset than you would if you were just to buy, a $1 million house to live in.
Cool.
There's a couple more questions as it relates to the lending process. A couple specifically here for you, Garrett. Does an investor need a lawyer or shared via Calvert?
Wow, these questions are good. They're kind of just setting us up.
Very well.
Yeah, so at Calvert, we've put together our own legal documentation. So you can choose your own lawyer, and then we send our instructions off to that lawyer. So they act for both you and us, save you cost and time, which is, as we know, is super important with flipping. So good question. And yeah, we operate pretty much the same way that the banks would in sending it off to one lawyer.
Okay. And then if I can get a better rate at a bank for my mortgage, do you have investors that are willing to lend the higher rate just for the renos that we can pay back in 3 to 4 months when the home is sold?
We don't have individual investors. We're a MIC, so we just have a pool of money that we lend out for specific projects. But the way I would answer that is, actually, it's tough, because if you're going to a bank and you're stating that you're doing a flip, they're probably not going to finance you because they don't want that business. What the better thing to do is typically to go with us at a higher rate for a short period of time for an open mortgage, and then refinance once you've built in that equity into the property, which Nolan could speak to a little more because he knows the takeout side and the A lenders and what they require. And like I said, I don't think if you mention that you're doing a flip, they won't finance you.
And if you do a mortgage with an A lender or a bank, and you don't tell them it's a flip and you pay it out in 6 months, the chances of you ever getting a mortgage with them again are slim to none. They catch on to that pretty quickly. So, you know, the Calvert product is definitely, especially if it's something that you're going to try to hold on to down the road, is the best option to do it outside of being able to basically pay for it cash on your own.
All right. Well, thank you. We've had so many questions here. In the last 3 minutes, I want to give everyone an opportunity on the hot seat to answer. What's your number 1 or 2 best tips to either make more money in a flip or save costs in a flip? Nolan, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think my 2 tips would know the market that you're planning on selling it to, and renovate it for specifically that market. And then the second piece, and something we didn't really cover, but I think is more important, is if you are going to take it out with a mortgage and hold on to it, fixed rate mortgages, doesn't matter whether it's with a bank or a smaller lender, are not your friend. It's the easiest way to give a whole bunch of your equity back to the bank in the form of penalties. So if you are taking out these mortgages and refinancing them, you want to make sure that you are taking 5-year variable rate mortgages or adjustable rate mortgages at prime, less, whatever. Stay away from fixed mortgages on rental properties.
Great tips. Alan, you're up next.
Yeah, well, I guess like Garrett, Nolan, and Jason have said, it's so important to buy right and make sure that you get a great deal when you buy. Maybe quickly in terms of saving costs, I think when it comes time to sell, but also when you're buying, if you're buying and selling through a traditional realtor, you're typically going to be losing 4 to 5% of the purchase price on each transaction. So when you buy, if you're buying on market, you're going to lose 4 to 5%, and when you sell, you're going to lose 4 to 5%. So that's something that Bōde, I suppose, can really help with. Is when you sell with us, there's only the 1% fee, so you can save a pretty significant amount of money, particularly if you're able to find a buyer that's unrepresented as well. So I think that's a big way you can save a lot of money when flipping.
Garrett, any final tips and tricks?
Yeah, Alan took the easiest one, buy right. But other than that, I would say build a team and have a strategy in place. You have all 4 of us here that you'll have our contact information. It's important to know what each of us do separately and how we can help your business. You've heard some of the things from us today on just tips of doing flips, but you didn't hear a lot about what we can do in the background. So making sure you have a strategy in place and reaching out to all of us to build your team is really important.
Excellent. And Jason, last
Yeah,
word?
those are all excellent. I guess mine would be just defining your criteria. What price point do you want to buy at? What price point do you want to sell at? What area do you want to buy in? And then just to touch on, the buying right is absolutely, I can confirm, a huge point of that, and building your team. Know where you want to buy those deals from. I'd be happy to connect with anybody, just putting that out there, in the Calgary area for deals. But there's many other people like myself in the area that you can source deal that aren't on the MLS. So defining your criteria, building your team, and buying right, and then knowing your lending are all great reasons, are great things to look at before you start your flips.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. So much time for your perspectives and pumping each other's tires, as well as just being resident experts on flipping. And I'm sure that I can speak on behalf of the attendees, and thank you very much for that. For everyone who joined us here today, to everyone's point, we'll be sending out contact information for all of our panelists. We also recorded this conversation, so we'll send that out as well, just in case you missed something specific that someone said, or someone else could benefit from hearing this panel discussion. We'll likely have more of these in the future, so don't hesitate to reach out to us with any other questions you may have. And we'll be following up with emails. So thank you so much for lending your lunchtime to us today. And we hope to hear from all of you soon.
Yeah, thanks
Great.
for having us. And if you want to take these questions offline too, I know we didn't get to answer all of them. Please do. And hopefully we can answer all of them next time.
Amazing.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Fantastic.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.